Ukraine pushes light buggies into heavy armor role, December 29, 2025. Data subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex. Join me with Arya in the latest show by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're diving deep into, well, the true sustainability of ground combat in Eastern Europe. The sheer scale of armor attrition. I mean, we have Russia documented losing over 3,200 tanks and now resorting to lightly protected, almost civilian vehicles. It forces a critical question upon NATO and Ukrainian forces alike. What is the future of battlefield maneuver?
And that staggering attrition rate, it really confirms a fundamental structural shift in modern military problems. You know, this debate isn't theoretical anymore. It's existential for ground forces planning across the entire continent.
Exactly. Our core question today is this. Does the emergence of cheap, mass-produced unmanned systems, so, drones and UGVs, does it fundamentally negate the strategic utility of all large, crewed combat vehicles? Or, on the other hand, does the superior mobility and protected firepower of advanced wheeled platforms, specifically mobile gun systems like the Italian Centauro, offer the essential and sustainable path forward for effective maneuver warfare? I'm going to argue that highly protected wheeled armored platforms are the necessary adaptation to maintain maneuver capability in these high-intensity conflicts.
I'll be taking the opposing view that the velocity of technological obsolescence and the tactical dominance of low-cost, mass-produced unmanned systems just make investing in expensive, crewed platforms unsustainable, no matter how quick they are. The economic calculus has irrevocably changed the nature of battlefield risk.
Well, the experience in Ukraine clearly shows the conventional main battle tank, the heavy, tracked Leviathan, is struggling against ubiquitous, cheap threats, and that's leading to these catastrophic, documented losses. But look at the opposing failure case. Russia's desperate pivot to light, unprotected mobility, like those makeshift buggies we've all seen, that's not just a deficiency in equipment. It's a failure of doctrine. It leaves personnel dangerously exposed.
It's the definition of desperation.
It is. So the pragmatic solution for Ukraine and its European partners is an unprotected movement. It's highly mobile, heavily armed, and crucially, protected wheeled vehicles. The Centauro 8x8 is, I think, the definitive model here. It was the world's first 8x8 high-pressure mobile gun system, providing MBT equivalent kinetic firepower, that's a 105 or 120 millimeter cannon, while leveraging high strategic and off-road speed. Its core doctrine is fire and escape. You use speed for survivability.
And that speed is vital, I agree, but so is its cost.
Well, the cost reflects necessary survivability. The Centauro 2 advances this dramatically by integrating enhanced protection tested to AEPLI 55, and for our listeners, that's the NATO standard for extreme mine and ballistic protection. This fortifies the vehicle against mines, against IEDs, and furthermore, crew safety includes crucial innovations like segregated ammunition storage and full NBC safe operation. These are they're non-negotiable features for securing and holding objectives during sustained operations, capabilities that UGVs and improvised light vehicles simply cannot provide. We have to prioritize protected human capital for control missions.
I agree that crew protection is paramount, but the issue, I think, is fundamentally about the cost-exchange ratio in an environment that is just saturated by drones. The hull being tracked or wheeled is, it's almost secondary to the fact that unmanned systems have totally blurred the tactical and operational boundary. We've seen drone teams capable of striking logistics nodes 50 kilometers behind the front line. For Ukraine, success hinges on reconciling mass and technology, which really means quantity, iteration, and adaptability over decades of protective engineering.
But that iteration speed comes at the expense of tactical endurance, doesn't it?
Precisely. The competitive advantage lies in the speed of iteration, not the thickness of the armor. Investing billions in a large, complex, crewed platform ties up resources for decades. Unmanned technology, conversely, forces continuous, rapid iteration. Software, navigation, communications. These things must be updated every, 4 to 6 weeks to evade electromagnetic warfare and technical obsolescence. UGVs like Millennium's Agemia, which is already being used by units like Ukraine's Kraken, are precursors to scalable, sacrificial, and most importantly, rapidly evolving systems. That agility is the only sustainable strategy against overwhelming saturation tactics.
Okay, let's discuss that scale and utility gap right now. A wheeled platform mounting a large cannon, whether it's the 105mm or the Centauro's newer 120-45mm, it delivers the sustained kinetic effect necessary for maneuver operations and for defeating protected targets, bunkers, entrenched positions. Small UGVs and UAVs, especially the improvised ones, they just can't replicate that raw, enduring, destructive power. Without that protected kinetic capacity, achieving and holding territorial control remains, well, I'd say an impossibility. Maneuver warfare requires boots on the ground, and those boots need a shielded heavy fist supporting them, capable of enduring a fight for hours, not minutes.
That's a compelling argument, but I would frame it a little differently. While small UGVs may lack the brute force of a 120mm cannon, precision strikes delivered by loitering munitions like the Russian Kub-E or Orion-E systems have clearly demonstrated the ability to neutralize high-value targets, including heavy armor. The mobility advantage that wheeled platforms offer is, I think, rapidly being mitigated by continuous, affordable surveillance maintained by drones. We now have pervasive, real-time situational awareness. So my central challenge is the economics of survival. How often does a multi-million-dollar Centauro actually survive a concentrated, coordinated attack by cheap, loitering munitions in a saturated EW environment? The vulnerability of a crewed system to an affordable, mass-produced killer drone is an economic and psychological defeat Europe simply cannot afford to normalize.
You are correct about the vulnerability of any platform to a well-placed loitering munition. That's why vehicles like the Centauro 2 are designed to force the enemy to use expensive, high-end munitions or complex coordinated attacks to achieve a kill. It increases the cost-exchange ratio in our favor. But the fundamental point stands. Maneuver requires protected presence. A loitering munition can destroy a target. Only a crewed platform can sustain fire, secure the crew, and ensure that the local command node, that human decision-making element, is safe and mobile.
Look, we cannot rely solely on the theoretical potential of unmanned ground systems, I'll grant you that, because currently their operational impact is marginal, and that's precisely due to challenges navigating rough terrain and their high vulnerability to aerial drones. However, this is the fastest-moving area of military R&D globally. We're already seeing prototypes like Milanon's Agema offering amphibious capabilities. The long-term, scalable solution lies in leveraging automation to overcome the limitations of terrain and operator saturation. Advanced AI systems like the autonomous decision-making solutions recently developed by companies like Kenzugi are aimed at bridging that human capital constraint, overcoming terrain and connectivity limitations far quicker than any protective armor upgrade can be designed or deployed.
That presupposes a velocity of AI deployment and reliability that is still, I would argue, theoretical in high-stress, pure-level combat. I come at it from a different way. Maneuver elements require exceptional sustained mobility and load capacity right now. Take the Brazilian-developed Guarani 6x6 armored personnel carrier. It's designed for versatility across both low and high-intensity theaters, offers crucial amphibious propulsion. It can cross wide rivers at 9 kilometers per hour, and, critically, carries up to 8 fully equipped soldiers safely. We're talking about giving a small, protected squad the ability to hold a critical objective or a bridgehead for 48 hours. That's a sustained, complex tactical function, faring large combat teams reliably that current vulnerable UGVs just cannot perform under continuous combat pressure.
That capability is necessary. I'm not denying that. But the assumption that the platform must be crewed is where the strategic risk lies. The real choke point right now is human capital. Training thousands of specialized drone operators takes weeks. It drains manpower and infrastructure, but automation is going to bridge that gap exponentially faster than we can build crewed, protected vehicles. the massive industrial capacity being generated globally for unmanned systems, which emphasizes rapid obsolescence to keep ahead of electronic warfare, demonstrates where the future advantage lies. The speed of the factory is becoming more critical than the thickness of the armor plate.
I think your focus on maximizing expendability demonstrates a dangerous lack of commitment to necessary protected maneuver in Europe. These wheeled armored vehicles are being developed with strategic partners like Texelis and advanced armored engineering integrating advanced solutions onto platforms like the Celeris, which is already in use by European forces. This, coupled with the Centauro II's NATO standard compatibility, represents a collective, industrial commitment to systems required to sustain complex multinational operations. I mean, even highly conventional assets like the M777 Lightweight Howitzer, which is a linchpin of Ukraine's current fire support, are now requiring new production contracts from BAE Systems just to reinforce supply. This proves the enduring, essential nature of conventional, non-expendable assets.
I see why you think that, but the strategic shift must align with the short adaptability cycle. While European partners are making large investments in traditional air defense, like the NSBA's activation of that staggering $5.6 billion Patriot missile deal under the European Sky Shield Initiative, that strategy is, well, it's fundamentally reactive and incredibly expensive. It prioritizes the costly interceptor over the cheap offensive saturation platform. The best defense against low-cost saturation tactics is to adopt low-cost, mass-produced offensive platforms that prioritize the technology that enables the cheapest loss, not the system that requires the most expensive protection.
The investment in sophisticated air defense and the enduring industrial commitment to protected mobility platforms suggests to me that the military establishment recognizes that territorial control and sustained maneuver can't be outsourced entirely to expendable drones. Extreme mobility is the pragmatic adaptation to the drone threat, balancing essential firepower, MBT caliber, with crucial survival characteristics, like AEP-55 protection and that fire and escape philosophy.
Complexity often requires multiple perspectives to fully appreciate it. And wheeled platforms are absolutely a necessary step away from the vulnerable heavy tank. But the evidence points to an economic and tactical model where costs and speed of adaptation rule. The Centauro II is a highly robust design. I'm not questioning that, but it remains a costly, slow-to-update system operating in an environment that is rapidly being optimized for cheap, mass-produced, and expendable technology. The true competitive advantage for Ukraine and its allies lies in pushing that rapid, modular, unmanned innovation curve, even if it introduces new tactical risks. Really, we're debating whether the future of ground maneuver is defined by kinetic protection or by economic survivability. The conflict hasn't yet answered which strategy ultimately wins the war.
You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry.
Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.